Okay, it is 5:32. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If you would stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome everyone, and welcome everyone who's watching from home. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee DeVore?
Present.
Trustee Gatt?
Present.
Trustee Kazam?
Present.
Trustee Reichert?
Present.
Trustee Wigginton?
Present.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Present.
All right, welcome everyone. The next is approval of the minutes of the Board of Trustees meeting on December 5th, 2023. I'd ask for a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any corrections to the minutes or discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Madam Clerk, you have one bit of correspondence. We didn't have that on the agenda, but I know you have some correspondence.
I do. The village received a letter from State Senator Dave Kaler. It reads as follows. Dear Dustin and friends, I am pleased to notify you that the Village of Peoria Heights has been approved for $50,000 in funding for infrastructure projects under the capital appropriation legislation signed by Governor Pritzker. A representative from the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity will be reaching out to work through the appropriation process. Please contact my office if you have any questions or concerns. I'm delighted to deliver this excellent news and wish you the best of luck in the completion of your projects. They will undoubtedly provide people with an opportunity to get back to work and play a role in the restoration of our local economy. Sincerely, Dave Kaler, State Senator, 46th District, excuse me.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you to Senator Kaler. That, Mr. Administrator, is about the third round of funding we received from Senator Kaler this year, so we're grateful. Next, I have a presentation. Teresa McDade, could I have you and your family come forward? Anybody with the chamber here tonight, please come up. Come on, Matt. So Teresa McDade is retiring from the chamber. We're going to miss her, and we prepared a proclamation in her honor. Whereas Teresa McDade is retiring from the Peoria Heights Chamber of Commerce, and whereas Teresa McDade has worked hand in hand with Barb Malaccio, president of the Chamber Board, to produce such a positive image of the village through popular events like the Fine Art Fair, Taste of the Heights, and Kringle Market. And whereas Peoria Heights' 125th anniversary celebration in 2023 would not have happened without her. And whereas Teresa McDade has been the Swiss Army knife of the Chamber, handling everything from business development to accounting, from marketing to design work, to just picking up the pieces. And whereas Teresa McDade's general inability to say no when asked for help has been wonderful for the Heights, if not always for her. Given the untold hours she's given to the community, and whereas Teresa McDade is just one of those go-getters, always finishing what she starts and always wanting to do more and more with a smile. And whereas Teresa McDade certainly has earned some time for herself, husband Matt, and her extended family, including non-human members, Memphis and Zena, and we'd still rather not let her go. We, the Village Board and Mayor of Peoria Heights, hereby adopt Teresa McDade as she has adopted us. Should Teresa change her mind, please, we'll keep a light on and a seat warm for her at the Peoria Heights table. Thank you so much for all your work with Heights.
Well, thank you. I came to the chamber first as a resident member, then as a business owner, and so I was more than happy to do business development for the chamber, and I appreciate it, and I see the need for the community. So thank you very much.
Let's get a photo up. You and Matt, let's get you a man in there, Barb. It'd be snug on this side of me.
We made that.
You stinker.
It wasn't me, so it was Mike.
That's year-to-date annual budget, year-to-date.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
What? We should be at accurate, it's 83%, we should be at 51%, so we're almost there.
Okay.
We'll have a schedule.
All right, we've got comments from the audience. If anyone is here tonight to address the board, please come forward to the podium and give your name and address, and try and keep your remarks under 5 minutes. Public comments are open. Public comments are open. Going once, twice. Public comments closed. We'll move on to old business. Any old business to come before the board? Hearing none, we'll get right into new business. Chief Decker has a presentation, then we have some agenda items related to his presentation. Go ahead, Chief.
You know how to, there we go. Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I've really enjoyed my time so far. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's okay if I stay here instead of...
Wherever you're comfortable.
I spent a lot of time, I believe, doing what you've asked me to do, looking at what we have and trying to decide where we should go. It's difficult for me to take off, as you know, I'm a commissioner in East Peoria, it's difficult for me to take off that hat. So I do this with that in mind as well. Even though it's not my job to figure out how to pay for it, I don't envy you at trying to make these decisions, figuring out how you're going to pay for it. So I appreciate the opportunity. I have a lot of things to get through, probably about an hour and a half. I'm kidding. It won't take that long. I want to start by saying anything I say tonight, I assure you it's factual. But I welcome your debate. I welcome your questions because sometimes people can think of things that maybe I haven't thought of. So I welcome that. I've had the opportunity to meet with most of you. And one thing that I'll say is that you all seem to have the same agenda in this. Like, you all want what's best for Peoria Heights. All of you have been concerned about how to pay for it, and I think that's just good government. You know, in a community, we want to have great services, but we can only afford to pay for what we can. So I appreciate that, and I know that there's been some controversy in the past, and I'm just happy to get past that, because what I've witnessed by speaking with each of you is just nothing but support. You've totally supported me, all of you, and I really appreciate it. So I'll jump right into it. I've had a great time here so far, and my first 6 weeks here, you notice those pictures on the left, that was last night. I'm a little tired. That was in West Peoria. It wasn't here in Peoria Heights, but we work on a mutual aid system, which is equally beneficial for us as it is for the other communities. But we had Structure Fire West Peoria. I've gone to the county fire chiefs meeting, Wednesday night trainings. We've brought in a couple new members. We have a couple more that I believe are planning to start with us. Applied for a small equipment grant. I appreciate Stephanie's help with that. We received it a couple of years ago, and she and I took a look at it, and there are no parameters saying that you have to wait so long to get it. So we put in for it, nothing else. They may tell us to resubmit next year, but all grants like that, especially with their those that have no matching funds, I think we need to try to get those. I conducted a critique of an incident that our members went on. Got a couple of pictures of those later on that I'll show you. Semi versus car that happened right out on Prospect. And I've spent a lot of time meeting with different people. Most of the volunteers, the trustees. I met with Chief Sahlberger from Peoria Fire Department, the EMS system, and Peoria County Dispatch Center. A couple things I want to go over tonight is our staffing, current concerns that not only I but others have. some of the staffing goals, the procedures and options that we have moving forward, how much it's going to cost, and then what I see as a long-term plan trying to accomplish some of these goals. This is what our current staffing looks like. So myself, Assistant Chief Schott has been here. He was here prior to me. He's been a great help with me through the day. We have 20 current volunteer members. This is something that it was new to me when I came to Peoria Heights, that they would actually sign up for shifts and be here overnight. Now, I know that does happen, but coming from a full-time department, that's just not something that I was used to. Tonight, there are a couple members that are here overnight. They're not being paid to be here overnight. They're just choosing to spend their night here instead of at home. It cuts down on that travel time to the station, so it could make a huge difference in a call. On the weekends, they recognized that those were more difficult to cover, so they offered a $50 stipend for those weekends to cover a 24-hour shift. Doesn't seem like much money, but especially for a college student that just loves this stuff, loves to try to make an impact in someone's life, they take that opportunity, and they've not had a very difficult time covering those shifts. In fact, they've covered most of them. I have a couple concerns with that in the future, but we'll get there in a second. So one thing that I wanted to talk about is, obviously, I think that it's important to create some paid positions so we can assure that someone's going to be here and be able to respond on every call. But I think it is equally as important to continue with our volunteer membership, because a couple people on a fire engine cannot get the job done. I think that house fire that we were at last night, just a quick guess, I bet there were 25 or 30 people there by the time we were done. Now, I think the most important thing is the number of people we can get there as soon as we can have them arrive on scene to make the biggest impact. But it is important for us to not only look at hiring staff, but also to grow our volunteers as much as possible. Talking about the cadet program, it's been around for a while, but with me, I think the answer, hopefully, is in our high school. I was speaking with Trustee Wigington a few minutes ago, and there's something called Lauren's Law. Lauren's Law is a young girl who died a number of years ago in Southern Illinois. She was a cheerleader, she was at practice, went into cardiac arrest. I believe they had an AED there, but no one knew how to use it, no one knew how to do CPR. So Lauren's Law was enacted with the help of her parents after the fact, that requires all high school students to have received CPR while they were in high school. It doesn't mean they have to get a card, it just means that they went through the process of learning how to do CPR. What we enacted in East Peoria was that we took that on ourselves. They taught the students CPR in their health class, which was one of the semesters of their freshman year. So allowing us to do it, one, takes the stress off the teacher, but two, gives us an opportunity to get to know the students. We got in there, we've done CPR many times, so it gives us the ability to show them how to do it. It also gives us the opportunity to talk about other things like Narcan or drug use and things like that, looking at signs and symptoms of cardiac compromise. Really important to start that young. So with this, I think that can, if we can get into the high school, I think that can help with our cadet program. The more young people we can get into this service, the stronger we can make our volunteer program. Again, I think it's important to try to keep that as strong as possible. Volunteerism in fire departments, unfortunately, those hours are declining throughout the nation. I'll talk more about that in a few minutes, but it's something that's concerning to a lot of volunteer fire departments. Some of the other things that we could do: increase per call pay or stipend, increase education allowance incentives. We do have an incentive now, and there is a possibility of increasing that somewhat to have more students that are wanting to be in the fire service to come here to be volunteers if possible. There's been a recent controversy, as you all know, and that has caused an outpouring of community support, and it's something that I've heard of from the volunteers when I've met with them. They've really appreciated that. They appreciate everybody coming showing support, telling them how much you support them. So back in July, that began the effort where they would put themselves in the fire station when they weren't being paid. On the weekends, they would take a 24-hour shift for $50. And if you think about sleeping in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden you get a structure fire tone that comes in. If you're at your house, how long is it going to take you to get up, get orientated enough to be able to get dressed, take off to the station? It's those extra minutes that if they're already here can make an enormous impact in the situation. So they started that effort, one, to say thank you, two, to try to preserve their service here. And I think they've done a great job. I've been nothing but impressed with their efforts since coming to Peoria Heights. Some of the challenges with our current staffing structure: declining membership. We have 20 members right now, and I couldn't get a solid number, but it was a lot more than that years ago. And it's just more and more difficult today. Some of our challenges, society and economic changes allows for less time to volunteer. If any of you have kids that have been in youth sports, it's very different. When I was a kid, I think I played 8 to 10 baseball games a summer, and now I've got a friend that he said his son plays over 100. Wow, that would be tough. But it just takes away your time to be able to volunteer. Some members join to help become educated, and when they do, that sets them up for being hired at other places. That's just going to happen. Many volunteer fire departments are struggling, not just us. Peoria Heights faces longevity issues. This next slide might shock you, but if you can't read it, that sign there says help wanted, odd hours, no pay, cool helmet. So if anybody is interested. The Chillicothe Fire Department, Dunlap. This is the estimated years on the listed department, not total experience, but the number of years the average person has on those departments. Chillicothe at 6, Dunlap at 6, Eureka at 9. East Peoria is the only full-time department I put up there, and it's 10. I assume that Peoria is somewhere between 10 and 15 as well. Morton is 12, Washington 9, and West Peoria very high, 14. But you see Peoria Heights is 4. So I dug into why I thought that was the case. I think that, I want to say it's easier, but a lot of farming communities tend to be able to have people on the departments because whether it's a family business, if there are small businesses in the village or the city where they are at, they can allow their employees to leave for an incident. It gets to be more difficult when you work at Caterpillar. You can't just leave to go to a structure fire. So some of those smaller communities offer the ability for, if their employees work someplace, to be able to leave to go help at an incident. I think that's difficult for Peoria Heights. We have members who are on our department but don't necessarily live in Peoria Heights, and that was enacted a number of years ago just to try to get more membership. And actually some of them are our best volunteers. They put in quite a bit of effort, quite a few hours. So why do we need to look at something different? Employers less likely to allow members to leave work to respond to calls, limit availability of members, increasing training requirements, legal considerations, and number of incidents. Man, those legal considerations are one thing, but what's really increased for me throughout my career, I've always dealt with it with my paramedic license, where I've had to have a certain number of continuing education hour over a 4-year period. But especially all of your fire certifications now have similar requirements. It doesn't mean if you don't take on certain continuing education, you can't say that you have that certification. But if you want to go further into other certifications, you have to get those up to date. So it's not just as simple as taking a class and you have that class behind your name for the rest of your career. Now, which looking at it, I guess outside in, I guess is the way it's supposed to be, because otherwise people aren't keeping their knowledge fresh. So I think it is a good thing. Just a few years ago is when our state started it, and it's been a big change for different departments. The same problems that we face, so do our surrounding communities, so they are less able to provide the support that sometimes we need, because they struggle with volunteer numbers. They struggle with having hours available for assistance. So just as we struggle, they are as well. So it puts more of the onus back onto us. There's no way to assure that someone is available for an emergency under the volunteer picture. I guess a long time ago when there would always make sure that someone be available. But there are times now where no one is available. And I'm sure you've all heard of that. Fortunately, we do have our surrounding communities that are willing to help us out whenever possible. But that's something that is going to become more of a problem in the future just because of declining membership. There is no way to force work, and I hate that word, force work, but most full-time departments have a way to force people into work. You can't force part-time employees, you can't force volunteer members to be available, but if your livelihood depends on the department, then there is a way. The ones that I'm used to, you have an overtime list, and whoever is at the top of that overtime list, if no one else takes it, they're up to be forced. It's not always a fun thing to deal with, but it is a way to assure that there's always going to be someone who is willing and able to respond. So what should we do in the future? First of all, I'll mention the contract that was offered with Peoria. I sat down with Chief Sahlberger. First, I really like Chief Sahlberger. Known him for a long, long time, and I think his heart was in a great place. I think that he would help this village out as much as he can. And he told me that day, he said, if you need us for anything, call, we'll be there. He offered the support of using the academy if we want, or the training tower if we wanted to use that for training. I've spoken with a couple of you. I'd like to propose maybe having a day down there where we have the trustees go and have some fun in the training tower. It is a lot of fun. Some of my concerns with the contract with Peoria Fire Department, and I'll tell you, when I first heard about that, it sounded like a good deal. It did. And no malice to them, but there are some concerns. It would, I'm afraid, cause a decreased interest from our current volunteers. I think that if we did contract with Peoria, it wouldn't be the intention, but before long, I think that our volunteers would no longer respond. No control over the size and strength of the department. You've heard recently about Peoria shutting down a truck company. They've recently reinstated Rescue One, but I don't believe Peoria Heights would have any control over decisions like that. Creating an ultimate total reliance on Peoria Fire, and that could ultimately cause our costs to go up. The long-term financial expectations, it is estimated that a Peoria Fire engine with 3 people costs somewhere between $1.3 and $1.4 million per year. So I'm not saying that that's what it would cost for us to do it, but Peoria is at the higher echelon of pay around the area. So I believe that's how much theirs costs. I'm afraid that, and just being a taxpayer, I'm afraid that that could affect our, or Peoria Heights taxes, because if later on they started looking at equal service, making sure that everybody's paying their fair share. I put this on there in case you never look at it. I'm guilty of this sometimes in East Peoria. I just don't pay attention to it. You guys have done a great job at keeping your property tax low. If you look at your property tax rate as compared to the city of Peoria, the city of Peoria is 1.1129 and Peoria Heights is 0.517. Now, I believe that the city of Peoria and the village of Peoria Heights provide similar service. You both plow streets, you fix roads, you have a police department, full-time police department. I think one of the biggest differences is there's a full-time fire department. And the difference between those two numbers is over twice as much. So I am concerned of what ours could possibly be asked to pay in the future. But I appreciate that we're looking in this direction, just making sure that we are able to take care of ourselves. Why are these numbers important? It is because we want to try to keep our property tax as low as possible. It also shows the importance of sales tax. All the business owners out there, sometimes we take them for granted, but man, that is an enormous amount of money that we allow others from other communities to help us pay for. All right. So the thought of providing full-time staff positions, it does guarantee coverage, no daytime, weekend, or holiday concern that someone's not going to be there, consistent responses, lasting professional structure. When I retired from East Peoria, I had a structure fire on my last day. The next morning was working to complete that call, the report, and when I did, I left, but nothing was different in the department. It was the way it was supposed to be. Unfortunately, if some of our people here that respond to a lot of calls, if one of them were to get hurt or go on vacation, that leads to a significant impact in our ability to respond to incidents. So one thing it does is make sure that someone's here and responding consistently. Volunteer staffing is still needed. I want to say that many times. I think that they should be two separate but just as equal portions of the department, because if we have 2 people, 3 people, or 4 people on a fire engine, that is not enough to put out a fire. It's just too much work, so we do need the volunteer staffing. Could be utilized for increased staffing the same way they do now, whether it be stipends or continued volunteer. So some may ask that why would they want to sit alongside someone getting paid? I believe one big reason is this could become, and I think it somewhat already has, we have a lot of young people who are going to school, probably to get on a full-time department, but they are completely involved with the fire service. Jake last week went to IFSI, spent the entire week at U of I at a class all week. That's a lot of the dedication we have. I think that this could become a place that young people through ICC knows that Peoria Heights is a good place for young people to come and volunteer their time, especially if they can spend some of their time jumping on a vehicle that does have staff personnel. So it is a larger engine company. It's something that they would not get the opportunity to do in a lot of other communities. All right, I'll wrap it up. I don't want to take up all the time tonight. So my goals is to make sure that no engine or truck goes out the door with any less than 2 people. I would be remiss if I said that it shouldn't be 3 or 4. Obviously it should. But I think that any less than 2, if one person drives, it's just unsafe. If I show up to a structure fire by myself, NFPA, OSHA tells me I'm not supposed to do anything, but I'm going to be compelled to do so. I want to make sure that it doesn't roll out the door with any less than 2. Work with volunteers to allow staffing of the 3rd and 4th position if possible, whether it be stipend or testing benefits. If we are testing every couple of years, there are certain parameters. I'm going to rely on our legal counsel to figure out what we can do to allow like preference points to potentially be higher on the list. So when we do go to hire, they would be looked at or have the position higher. And finally, something that I know some of you have talked about, you spoke with me about it, but this NFPA requirement, the standard is 15 staff personnel within 9 minutes of a structure fire, 90% of the time. I think that if we could assure that there are at least 2 people, maybe one full-time, one part-time, whatever, that especially then if we can staff the other 2 spots with volunteer or stipend, then we can meet that requirement most of the time. That is a difficult requirement to meet. The city of Peoria struggles to meet this, and I don't believe they meet it 90% of the time. It is difficult, but it is something that we in the fire service are supposed to strive toward. So this is what I mentioned to you a little while ago. I'm at the end, so I'll take a moment to talk about. This was a call within the first few weeks that I was here, happened right out on Prospect. Our men and women that were on the department did an exceptional job. From the moment, if you look at this, how difficult it would be to get the person out of there. But from the time the tones went off, in other words, the dispatcher pushed the button and they know that something is going on, And they then said that we have the person extricated was 9 minutes. That is awesome. You could not expect better from Peoria, East Peoria, Morton. That was as good as it should be. Excellent job. This was within our critique, and I plan to do a lot of these. So, open it up for any questions from any of you.
Thank you for the presentation. Go ahead, trustees.
We knew most of this, Chief Decker. What is your proposal for staffing going forward? Because that's, I think, where the majority of my questions are. I mean, everything that you listed here, I think Chief Solberger told us. So we're quite aware of the challenges regarding volunteerism. It was enlightening to know that Peoria struggles to meet the NFPA standards. I knew that, but to have it said is something different. But what is your recommendation for our staffing going forward?
I think my minimum recommendation is never leave the station with less than 2 people. How we get there is, frankly, I want it to be better tomorrow than it is today. Today, before I got here this morning, Matt was potentially the only person on an engine. And that brings horrible challenges. If there were a structure fire, especially with someone inside, he would be compelled to try to get the person out. So whatever money that I am, the department is given to try to make better, I will use. As many full-time people as I can, and everything after that, I'll utilize for part-time work. I never want the vehicle to roll with any less than 2, but using full-time, part-time, and then trying to keep our volunteerism boosted, trying to have a possibly 3rd and 4th person, that would be my goal. Now, if money was no object, 4 people per vehicle would be, extremely expensive.
So, Chief, right now we have 1 full-time employee, which is you, and then is is Matt Schott, is he part-time or full-time?
I don't know what I know when he's here. I haven't looked into his, he was
Does he
hired
work
for-
more than 32 hours a week?
He puts in more than 32 hours a week.
Does he get paid for 32 hours or more a week? Because I think in the state of Illinois, if you work more than 32 hours a week and you're paid more than 32 hours a week, you're considered full-time in the state of Illinois.
I don't know that. I've not looked at his paycheck.
Okay. So we have 1 full-time and I'll just say 1 part-time. Is that fair?
Yeah, like I said, I haven't looked at
Okay.
his.
So we're coming up on budget time. For this next fiscal year, what would you like to see? Another full-time? Take baby steps in that direction? Should we concentrate on part-time instead of 1 full-time, 2 part-time?
I think looking at the money and then what the village can afford, and then I will hire as many full-time as I can. But taking into account that I have to have enough part-time to be able to cover the remaining spots.
Right. And I know Morton, I read an article in April, they were using like a data-driven approach where they were looking at where they were weakest on the volunteer roster, what times, and they were just targeting that with part-time employees. Is that a strategy?
It is a strategy. To me, it's a scary strategy because I've been on cardiac arrest, structure fires at 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I do understand that, and it's certainly something to look at. But for me, it seems like whenever you are least prepared is when something is going to happen. So I prefer to look at it, a consistent schedule, and then build from there.
Can I interrupt? I'm sorry, Trustee. How many, I think we need to know, how many bodies does it take to fill those spots, right? Do we need to have 2 full-time people? But if we have 2 full-time people, there's 8 part-time people. Or if we have 5 full-time people, then we need 4 8 part-time people. How does that break down to give you 2 bodies on every truck 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
And if
Traditionally, fire service works either 24 on, 48 off, or, I've never done this, 48 on, 96 off.
Okay,
And the reason they do that, frankly, is for cost effective. It's a higher number of hours, however, it is a house-like atmosphere. So they can sleep, but they can also be out all night on calls, continuous 24 hours, which happens once in a while. That's how the traditional fire service covers the time. So for each person, so if you hire 3, then you would have to fill the other seat to have a minimum of 2 by part-time personnel. My question is, how many part-time personnel it will take? I will say that we have very dedicated volunteers, and I think that that's where I would look first for some of our part-time help, because they've already got gear. We've already been working with them for training, and if possible, utilize those that we know rather than trying to bring in those we don't. One question too, and I think it was him that asked the first day about whether or not full-time departments will allow membership to work part-time. I remember my answer that night, but one thing that I missed was when you were hired on a department and then you get into the pension system, those first 7 years are a little touchy. That if you were to find yourself catastrophically injured off the job, then you have no coverage. So it is suggested that people don't take those difficult labor-intensive jobs outside of their regular employment for those years, if nothing else, like a brother or sisterhood, watching out for each other in case something did happen.
Chief, if I could,
Go ahead.
if I could just elaborate on the question. We have an action item today, which is approval of paid fire department positions, but I've not heard you tell us how many positions we need. There's only one person qualified in this room to tell me what we need on the Peoria Heights Fire Department, and that's you. So the question still stands, where do we go with staffing? If we're approving paid fire department positions tonight, but you've not told us how many positions we need or what you would like, I'm at a loss here.
Well, that's easy. 2 minimum per day would equal 6. Whether it's full-time or part-time is dependent on how much money is available. Now, even if we hired 6, we would still need part-time because there would be vacations. Unless you wanted to pay overtime, it would be better to cover it with other means. So to cover it solely with full-time, a minimum would be 6. But it would be based on how much money is available.
And I'm not convinced we need 6 or 12 or 18 or 24, whatever the number is. I'm not convinced we need that, but I need that information from you. And one of the things I'm curious about is the fire departments that surround us. How many full-time firefighters do they have? Because one of the things when we look to structure our fire department, some people have a tendency to say that we need to staff and respond like Peoria does, where I'm of the opinion we need to staff and respond like Chillicothe does, or towns comparable to our size. So I would really like us to look at how towns our size staff their fire departments and emulate that. It works. If you talk to citizens that live in Germantown Hills or Metamora or Chillicothe or Dunlap, you're not going to find a single one of them that feels unsafe. So the narrative that we need to be like Peoria or have a roster full of full-time firefighters sounds like a plan Peoria devised, not Peoria Heights. So I'd really like to see a plan that capitalizes on our successes with our volunteer department.
So one problem with that, when I first started looking at this, what really shocked me the most, if you look at Peoria Heights, I looked at East Peoria, Morton, Washington, I think 9 or 10 different surrounding communities. Dunlap I didn't because I couldn't find the data for them. But the most dense population is Peoria Heights, which is, if you looked at the other closest dense populations, it was East Peoria and Peoria. So if you look at dense population, for me, I struggled a bit to understand why this issue was the issue, but that number made sense to me. This is a very densely populated area, so therefore, for the number of people, there was a high call volume. If you look at our call volume, for number of people is very, I wish I would put that slide in here, because to me it was somewhat shocking that we have, I think we're going to be hitting 1,300 calls this year. That is a high call volume for the number of residents that we have. One reason for that is we have a very high influx of people that come in to the village through the day, especially on weekend nights.
Right, and my understanding is that a majority of those calls are EMS, not actual structure fires or fire.
That's the case any place.
Right.
Now, I once said that to a Washington DC firefighter. I said, 85% of our calls are EMS and 15% are fire. And he said, no, 100% of our calls are EMS. 15% happen to be fire, because even on fire, there's an EMS element. So we'll never get away from that. But depending on the community, it seems like the older communities tend to have a higher percentage of structure fires. We do have a good relationship with AMT. They provide our coverage for EMS, and that does take some of the weight off for that. However, you see that we still respond to quite a few EMS calls.
And I understand the density and discussions like that, but looking at how fire departments are structured across the state, there are other towns, similar to the village of Peoria Heights, and most of them don't have full-time firefighters. So I'm really hoping we look at how we structure our fire department in the future. We at least look and learn from how communities are structured across our state. There's no need to reinvent the wheel or bankrupt ourselves by going to a full roster of 12 firefighters when we'd be probably the only town of 5,000 in the state of Illinois that chooses to do so.
Clinton, Illinois.
Clinton, Illinois?
Full-time firefighters, approximately the same population. In fact, less call volume than Peoria Heights.
How do they pay for it? Is that the nuclear plant? That's Clinton.
But it's in county, so actually, they've really struggled.
Right.
Obviously, I got to know them quite a bit. There are a few departments like that. There are one that was told to me, they run a structure similar to what I'm thinking about here, based on what I think the number will be, is starting out with 3, if I could squeeze it, 4 full-time personnel, and then cover with part-time. I love the idea of volunteer. If you can help me attract more volunteers, then that would be awesome, because we can staff it with 3 or 4 people per vehicle.
Well, I've certainly tried to help.
Yeah, it's tough.
Supporting our volunteer fire department goes a long way to attracting volunteers.
Right.
So I can say without hesitation, I've tried and will continue to. But I am concerned that if we rode too quickly, too fast, that we're going to find ourselves in a situation where it is difficult to afford.
I understand.
So baby steps, I guess, is what I'm getting to. Any plan that, like I said before, capitalizes on the success of our fire department. I think last year was 1,500 calls, if I remember correctly. I thought that was the number.
I was thinking 13, 14, but it might have been 15.
Yeah, so, and from what I understand, that's quite the call load for volunteers. So kudos to them. They're a great crew.
They are a great crew.
So, thanks, Chief.
Chief, sorry.
Oh, no, I'm just asking Trustee Weisenberger, he was finished. Okay, go ahead, Trustee
Do we
DeWart.
have what is the cost of 6 full-time firefighters?
6 full-time. I took that slide out. I believe
It was,
550 to 650, somewhere around there.
low side was 659, high side was 789.
Okay.
Okay. And then do we know what the cost would be if we had 6 part-timers on top of that?
I don't, because I really believe that a lot of our volunteers could be utilized in that role.
Sure. I guess I just think that it's hard for us to sit here and say, okay, we'll approve this many positions when we don't really know, like, there's a lot of questions I have, like, what are the requirements for those positions? Like, what are we asking for? Are we starting them out at top dollar? Are we starting them out at a little bit more of a negotiable, mid-range? Like, I think there's a lot of questions to be answered before we can just like approve positions.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm confused by a little bit by the presentation, and thank you so much, and I appreciate the conversations that you've had with us behind the scenes, but I was coming here this evening thinking that I was going to hear a proposal of paid positions and the cost associated with that. And I don't think, I don't understand, are you asking us for how much money we're willing to spend on the fire department and then you'll fill in the positions? Or
No, I'm asking you to assure that there are going to be at least 2 people on a vehicle every day. Now, how that is accomplished will depend on how much money the village is able to spend.
Could I comment
Yeah.
briefly? I've had numerous meetings with Chief Decker on this topic, and we worked the Cadillac model at first, which we just talked about, that came in, and actually, when you start adding the 40%, it looked at about $900,000, to add that many firemen, and we talked about that. We both understood that, like Trustee Weisenberg said, that, that's a pretty big chunk right out of the gate. So we worked through this, and I asked the same questions that you asked, Chief, what do we need to make this work for Peoria Heights? Paid positions, part-time positions, and we came down to a number, and he did a lot of research on this, and he took the multi-county fire departments, probably from here to Bloomington, and we worked out an average of what it would be to hire firemen. So what we came up with that we can afford, that I think I've talked to some of the board members at our weekly meetings about this, is what is in front of you tonight. And I know that you don't have the exact numbers, but I'm going to cover them here because I don't want to delay this any longer. This is probably about a 3-month process to get people hired, and I think we should move on sooner than later. So what we came up with, the chief and I, and not just me, as Trustee Weisenberg said, he is the expert in the fire, not me, but I do know the finances. So for 3 full-time positions and also 5 part-time positions, we're looking at approximately $454,316. And that is something that we can't afford to do. So that was my recommendation as far as approving that amount.
And is that just a salary? That doesn't have anything to do with pensions or anything?
Well, that does include pensions for the full-time positions. Those salaries do include everything from pensions to health insurance, to workman's comp, to sick leave. It covers everything.
It's pay as you go with the pensions. No pension debt. We're
Right.
paying the obligations as we go.
Well, I don't know that has been decided. We're talking about how much pension responsibility we take on, and then pension debt is a different conversation. How,
Well, not for the, no, Chief, for the fire, we would pay the pension cost factored into the salary cost.
This number includes what we would pay into the pension.
Yes,
What
so-
we're required to pay into the pension.
So a full-time, obviously a salary of a full-time fireman, the average $57,281, but the village's cost after pension, health insurance, workman's comp, unemployment, sick leave is $92,091.
Okay.
So,
That's
Chief, and thank you, Chief Sutton, for that input, because that's, I think, what we were looking for. I think that was the resounding, what we were hearing from the
Well-
board. One thing, and what I want to ask you, Chief, is you kept going to 6 positions would be necessary. We talked in your presentation about the different NFPA, OSHA requirements. And, so I'm coming from a public safety perspective. So I also want to make sure that we have the personnel that you feel comfortable with that's going to be able to meet or close in on those standards. I know we're chasing those standards. Now, in my discussions with your predecessor and predecessors before that predecessor, OSHA, I believe, requires 2 in, 2 out. Is that right?
Yes.
We've had discussions, I think the mayor has, Mayor Phelan has said, the question is, how many does it take to fight a fire? And it's always hard to nail that down.
It is.
depending on the situation, right?
Right, which is what NFPA has tried to do.
Correct. So 2 people on a truck. Is that
There would
something that you feel comfortable with that will give us public safety?
That's what I feel comfortable with, is the minimum to respond out the door. Now, I didn't get a lot into it, but there is no way we can assume that that would be enough. We're going to need our volunteers. We're going to need to call for the support from Peoria or West Peoria or Dunlap for that assistance. That's the only way we'll be able to come close to the NFPA requirements. Otherwise, it would be about 45 people working over 3 shifts.
So to get those 2 people on a truck, that we need 24/7, right? You're doing a hybrid model of volunteers and paid staff,
Yes, sir.
and you believe we would need to hire for paid positions, whether it be part-time or full-time, the model that Chief Sutton just said?
Yes, sir. I think it is easiest for me, whether it be scheduling or manager, to have a full-time personnel, but more expensive. So as you can imagine, because the first full-time personnel will be on a schedule like 24 on, 48 off. The part-time is just a matter of scheduling that. So that would be some work to do, but that does not discount the continued need for our others, our volunteer staff, to be there to respond, and as well as the surrounding departments.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Sutton, one question for you. So this board last week, or last meeting, I think to our credit, we held the line on levy. We did not raise our levy at all. Did not add any burden to our taxpayers from the village's perspective. That being said, now that we have the levy for 2024 budget season, like Trustee Weisenberg is coming up, we have this come in. Where are we going to, from the administration perspective, are we going to find that?
Well, as I said, this current budget, we can afford this, and that's because of our surpluses. Now, I'm not sure what Chief Decker's budget's going to look like next year, and I think it all depends on how this model works. You know, I think that we have a lot of young talent on the volunteer side, from what I hear, that I think they'll fill some of those part-time positions, and I think that's a big division when you start talking volunteerism versus paid, and historically, that's what's happened. When we've had some paid, and I know this because I've seen it firsthand, the volunteers went away because they look at it like they're being paid, why should I do it? So I think this model can work, and I think that with this talent that we have, that are able to work some of these part-time hours, they're being paid, they don't take that approach that it's them versus us. There could be more of a team effort, and that's how I envision this. And also I think Chief Decker is a good leader, and I think he can make a difference. So I'm optimistic that come budget time that he's not going to come back to me and say, we need 10 more people. I think this can work. Maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I don't think I am. I think from everything that we meet probably 3 times a week and everything I'm hearing, that we're on the right track, and I think this is a great start. And it's something we can afford that's not going to break us. We're not going to have to cut services at this point. I think this is a win-win for everybody. And we started high, and when we first started high, I think I was still in sticker shock because I thought we're going to have to sell the tower. But I think that after we work through it, I think that I'm very happy with this direction. But to answer your question, Trustee Wigington, I don't know what that budget looks like next year, but we'll have to figure something out. And you guys might have to make some decisions. And, you know, we do have some other things coming. You know, we do have some water issues, and we took that into consideration to say, what can we do to give Chief Decker the success, you know, the tools to succeed, and this is it, without disregarding everything else that we're responsible for.
So Chief, if I could just get some clarity here, or just say this out loud for my sake. The Peoria option would have cost us $1.5 million. Volunteers, as Chief Decker attested to, eventually would have been gone, and we would have been left solely relying on the city of Peoria. We know the city of Peoria was looking for $1 million. They were in the paper not too long ago looking for it. So.
Well, the Peoria, let me just go back briefly, and this is a moot point because I think we're way past that, but the Peoria option was $330,000 for the contract for them. I think what Chief Decker said is to put an engine here, it was $1.2 million, but I don't think that ever was brought up, but it's a moot point. But
It is a
anyway.
moot point, but the 300,000, whatever it was just for the fire aspect.
Yes.
If we had Peoria Fire cover fire and EMS,
Right.
I did the numbers, it was
Yeah,
right around 1.5 million. So if we lost our volunteers and all we could rely on was Peoria Fire for fire and EMS, that price was way over $1 million. Chief Solberger did his presentation with the numbers and some quick Peoria Heights math. It was
Well, I think there was some, I think there was some
$1.483 million.
à la carte options. I think there was just fire, there was just fire and EMS with AMT involved. That had a lot of layers to it, but that, again, we've already gone over that.
No, I understand that, and not reducing the services.
Right,
Continuing
right.
to provide the citizens of Peoria Heights a fire department that handles fire and EMS. The price was well over $1 million. So it looks like we're at 3 full-time and 5 part-time for $455,000.
Does
Yes.
that
Does
include
that
or not
include-
include the chief?
That's
That
what I was
does,
getting at.
that does not include,
Does not include Chief
No.
Decker.
no,
How about our existing part-time employee?
no, does not include him.
Okay, so on top of our current budget, $455,000 more dollars.
Yes,
So our current assistant chief is currently a part-time employee.
yes.
So if we were to do this, it would be possibly moving him to full-time
Well, there's
and then replacing.
Well, I think with the full-time positions, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, there is a mandated testing that has to occur, kind of equivalent to the power test on the police side.
Yeah.
So I'm not very familiar with that, but just in our discussions, I think that will trigger a testing process.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I have intentionally not, I was supposed to give him a call, and I have intentionally not, because what I wanted to do is come here tonight and be able to give you the truth, the facts, the way they are. I did not want to be, because I'll tell you, I've gotten to know these guys. I really like them. I like them a lot. I did not want to be accused of making a decision based on any of that. So what I wanted to do was come here and just tell you the truth, what I believe we need, and then move forward from there. So yes, I need to rely on him quite a bit to answer the questions of how and who we can hire. And it does need to be a testing process. It is covered by, it's called the Fire Act, the state law does cover.
And Chief, I would hope that, I started and said, preserving the volunteer fire department, that was what I was trying to do. And then as we move beyond that to more of a paid crew and change the model, I would hope that the volunteers that have been with the department could receive, you talked points or point structure. I would hope that that would be a consideration. I would hope that our Heights residents could be a consideration as well. Would there be some collective bargaining necessary to do that? Do you envision any collective bargaining or needing to speak to, the firefighters union or anything like that?
I think that's a separate issue, and that's not something that would be for me to do. I think that would be inappropriate for me to do. As far as, I think that with your first question, I agree that those that have put effort and time into the community and the department, that's why preference points are given. There are many different reasons for preference points. One's like paramedic certification or license, but that is based on different parameters. Some governed by law. I don't know what the home rule aspect is that might be some changes as well. But there is some specific language regarding the testing process and the points awarded in that process.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, I would just like to correct the record one moment, because I don't want to undersell our fire department. In 2022, our fire department answered 1,775 calls, not 1,500 calls. So I just wanted to clear that.
I think, now.
That was
I saw
according to
those
Chief
numbers.
Saulberger.
Yeah, I saw those numbers, and I know some of them, I believe some of them were calls that AMT went on and the Heights did not, but I could not swear to that.
Well, what I was going to say is that, as Trustee Weisenberg said in the beginning, this is an action item on our agenda this evening, and we had nothing before the meeting until this presentation, which I appreciate, but much of it was information that we already knew about our fire department. And I personally don't feel comfortable voting on this without having something in front of me, paperwork that says, you know, this is what we're paying, this is what, I mean, in this $454,316 amount for the 3 full-time paid positions and 5 part-time, it didn't include your salary or the other part-time position. I mean, I just feel like it's irresponsible. Not that I don't want, I realize this is the direction we're going. I realize that, that's what we've taken on, and I want to be supportive of that. But to vote on this and not have these numbers in front of us, to me, seems irresponsible, and not have the opportunity to really look at it with more closely.
I guess I don't know what we're voting on, right? Because on here it says we're voting on positions, but are we voting on positions? Like if we say today we will agree to 3 full-time, 4, 5 part-time, then we strong arm him into that's the only thing he can do. Are we agreeing on increasing the budget for the fire department $454,000? Like, I don't know, like which pathway we go.
Yeah, that would be much more understandable if we were voting on increasing yeah, I agree with you.
I would say increasing the amount would be the best route to go, because I don't want to dictate on how he's going to structure this
Right.
department, because he knows what it's going to take to make it successful. So my vision was to approve the amount, let Chief Decker structure what he wants to structure. And we have had some meetings, so I have an idea what this is going to look like. But again, this goes back, it's what we're paying him to do.
Yeah.
This is his wheelhouse. And then he could come back and say, here's what the structure looks like. So my vision was just to approve the amount.
So
Okay,
you're just looking to approve $454,416 to set aside, and then he's gonna come back with what the total bill's gonna be, including him?
No, he's gonna come back with what he can do for that numerical amount.
Correct. And again, I go back to the timeline on this. We're probably looking 3 to 4 months, correct, Chief?
Correct.
Okay.
I think we'll be close to end of April, 1st of May.
Yeah.
so essentially someone needs to make a motion to agree that we would increase the budget in this amount in order to pay for personnel.
Right, and we're still technically under presentation, but if someone wants to, I was going to ask for that motion when you were done discussing.
So,
I
Chief
have more
Sutton.
questions that I haven't gotten to finish, so.
Go right ahead, go ahead.
Okay, so you had said in your presentation that the volunteers are picking up these nights and weekends and they're just, being part of a team. So when we go to this model where we have paid personnel, do you feel like that's something you still feel like this team is willing to do? Or do you think that that's gonna be something they're gonna break away from because if they're not on the paid side of it?
That's an excellent question. I'm hopeful that they will still feel motivated because of preference points, if that's allowable by state law. So I'm gonna have to lean on him. The question is there any benefit for them to do it? I believe so. Being a young firefighter a long time ago, I would have jumped at the opportunity to go hang out at a firehouse and run calls on an engine. I did. I was a paid-on-call in East Peoria, and I would spend time there even though I wasn't being paid. So I don't want to be naive, and I don't want to tell you something that's not true. I can't guarantee, and I certainly understand there could be the fear of, well, that person's getting paid, why should I be here? I believe the motivation to be there is because they want to be there. They want to be in those paid positions. That's why I'm hopeful if we can utilize preference points in testing, that would be the encouragement for people to be a part of the volunteer or part-time employment.
So
Okay.
what do you mean preference points?
So when you test for a fire departments test every 2 years, unless the list expires or is exhausted, then they test within those 2 years. But they put together a testing process consisting usually of a written test, an oral interview, a physical test, and then they compile a list. That list then, is numbers 1 through 10 or however many are on it. Then there's a period of time where people are allowed to submit preference points. Depending on how it's structured, it's usually then after that initial list, before the final eligibility list. They submit their preference points. Sometimes cities give preference points for things like paramedic license. Sometimes military is always recognized as having preference points. But there are other things you can do for preference points, just depending on state law, what will allow us to do it. If possible, and I believe it is, I believe there is something in there that speaks to service on the department, then I think that should be recognized as possible preference points.
Can I ask a question here? I know you
Go
have so
ahead.
much
Go
more.
ahead. It's okay.
You've
It's okay.
asked a
Go
lot of
ahead.
my questions, so maybe this is one of yours.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
In this study of our current fire department, have you done an assessment of our machines, of our infrastructure, and what cost do you foresee coming down the pipe for that type of thing? Not just, I understand you call them machines, so the trucks and that type of thing, but we've already seen a lot of cost that wasn't budgeted in last year's budget, or this year's budget rather. Can you speak to that a little bit?
It was said to me a long time ago that usually you can take the past 20-year budget, apply whatever multiplier necessary to keep up with cost of living or interest or whatever, and you can apply it to the next when it comes to apparatus and things like that. I was pleasantly surprised at the condition of the apparatus. These men and women take care of their equipment. I mean, your tax dollars are being well taken care of. They keep them washed, they keep them, and the thing about washing them every day is not just so they look pretty. It's an opportunity to look over them in detail as they do. So they keep them in great shape. Having said that, yes, there is concern with age, but not any more than normal concern. NFPA recommendations are usually on the lower end of how long you can get out of apparatus. A lot of it is dependent upon the maintenance that is taken on the vehicles, the wear and tear. This is not, it does have a large hill, but they're not running hills every time they're going on calls. So it just depends on my experience. They would say that you need to replace a vehicle, 10 years in, but we'd have vehicles that were 20. There are departments that get less than that, just depending on how hard they are on. I think this department has taken very good care of theirs. So even though recommendations would say they need to be replaced, I'm someone that I don't like to nickel and dime. I don't like to waste money. One of my first couple days here, there was a repair going on one of our vehicles at Station 2. And I inquired about it because I don't want to spend a lot of money on something if it's just not going to have the value. That was a low-cost repair. We may get a number of years still left out of that machine. So I can't give you an exact answer other than talking about averages.
And what about, our facility? I know we actually have a very large facility in this building to house the firefighters, but is there any cost associated with updating that? Do you see that coming down the pipe?
There always is. I have not had the time to dive into what needs to be done here. He might be able to speak to that better than I can. I think that it is, with any building that has some age, it's going to have issues. And there's not a lot to it, but the one thing I see is, I notice the lighting. I know that what some places have done, and something that I was involved with over there is upgrading the lighting. A lot of those things can be, it can almost pay you to have them switched out. But there are other things, for instance, doors break, just the wear and tear is going to cause that. It is not an older station than a lot of other stations, but it's certainly not a brand-new station. So yeah, you should expect that there's going to be maintenance issues and costs, but I don't foresee them being, much larger than what would be expected.
I think some people have brought to our attention that or have said to us that the facility wasn't up to par to have paid staff. So I think maybe that's what Trustee Kazam is asking, do you foresee a very large project coming because we are not up to code on something to have a full-time or employees here?
I think there are some updates that can be made for aesthetics to make, certainly the kitchen area upstairs. If you've been downstairs, that area was updated quite a bit when the ambulance was here. So those updates not only were successful, but are still being enjoyed today. There are a couple rooms, like bedroom areas, that are in place and utilized. There are also a couple rooms across the hall that I believe were probably originally made to be like that. Would not take much money or effort to make them such also.
So just no huge blinding things like straight out of the gate that you can see.
I wish I would have looked in that, because I would hate to say no. There's nothing that that I see. The only thing I've noticed is like the sewer gas smell, but I think that's, well, I've been told that has been the way it's been for many years, but not necessarily something wrong. I think more the way the pipes run.
Okay. So when we were talking about the volunteers and still picking up these nights and weekends, so I'm just trying to gauge from a team perspective, you feel like your team right now is on board with this moving forward?
I have not. I've talked to them in general because I didn't want to, put out, because one, I didn't know what the village would support or could support. So I've talked in generalities, and I have talked about there being full-time staff, but I've also, every time I've mentioned it, I've hounded the importance of keeping our volunteers strong.
Yeah.
It is necessary. Otherwise, we are looking at whether it be increased expenses or more of a reliance on our neighbors. I think that as long as we have good leadership, I could die tomorrow, as long as you keep in mind that whoever comes in here has to keep that as a focus, I think that is what can happen. They are very motivated right now. I'll tell you what, they do a great job. I have been around full-time firefighters for the last 30 years, and I've been very, very impressed with these men and women that I've seen here. I think they're motivated. I think they want to be here. I think some of them want to be here on a full-time or part-time basis, and I think others, in fact, I know some, wouldn't be sad if we didn't have full-time people. They'd be happy just continuing to volunteer, or they'd be here happily with full-time personnel.
Okay, so this number of the $454,000, that is on top of your salary currently, but is that also on top of Chief Schott's salary, or he would have, no, I don't think so. Or would he have to apply for one of these positions or test for one of these positions? I feel like that's where I think that's unclear. Like, is it you and Chief Schott plus these 8 positions potentially, or this $454,000, or is it your salary plus this $454,000?
So I was thinking my position and then the other positions.
The $454,000.
Now, one thing I didn't know, and I haven't had an opportunity to talk to him about it, didn't think about it until it was brought up here, was his salary as far as, is that available to add, or is that being taken off? And I just haven't asked him that.
So essentially, it would be what we have in our fire budget now, minus Chief Schott's salary, plus the $454,000, is that correct?
Yes, this does not include the chief's salary, correct? Or
No, okay, So we're saying, everyone's asking, like, we have our current fire salary plus this $454,000. But really, it would be our current budget minus Chief Shot's salary plus the $454,000. So it would actually be less than his salary. Oh, that's already part of the budget.
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
Am I
no,
making sense
no,
there?
no. Well, no, not this year's budget, 'cause we didn't have that position,
Okay.
But Shock's is.
but Shots was.
Yeah,
Right.
so
Yeah.
you can subtract his salary from it.
His,
Yeah.
Because it's not-
Chief Decker's
but
salary
this
was
is
not in
new.
this budget,
Yeah,
right?
Correct.
that was going to be one of the questions I asked, if I can I ask a couple of questions real quick?
Go ahead,
before I
take
forget
all the
them?
time you need.
Okay, first off, for the part-time positions, how do you see those shifts working? Are you gonna do a 24 on and then they just do it once a week? Is it 8-hour shifts, 4-hour shifts? How do you see that coverage working? Let's play numbers and say that you get 4 part-time people, just,
In a perfect world, if they picked up 24-hour shifts at a time, that would make it life easy.
okay,
I don't know that just depending on who it is, who would be available, willing.
Right.
If that's what it would be.
Okay, but
I do think that
it is an
for our
option.
current volunteers who became part-time employees, I think a lot of them would like to do something like that.
would, and maybe this is a question for us or maybe him, do you see, so you put, I volunteer for you, you put me on a 24-hour shift or you put me on 8 hours for 3 days or whatever the shift is. And I'm sitting at home not doing anything else. Can I still come volunteer for the volunteer rate after my 24 hours have been met?
I would, yes, and that's what I'm hoping everyone does.
Okay,
Yes.
because I definitely think that is a way to keep the volunteerism involved in
Right.
it too, is that you're not just a paid employee, you are also a volunteer because your extra time is valuable to us as well. It is just for these hard hours to cover, we need somebody there. But, and then my second question was going back to what Trustee DeVore said about Trustee Shock right now is making a certain amount. And what we have put at a standard annual firefighter salary is substantially less than what he is currently getting. So the question becomes, does he drop down? Do you try to make that up and maybe instead of a third full-time employee, take on more part-time employees to try to balance that out?
The chief and I spoke about the cost. One thing that I asked him, I said, would you mind if I used some of this area to boost up the full-time? The reason is I think that it's important to, if we're going to have one full-time person per day, I think it's important for that person to be very responsible, very seasoned, just to be a very responsible person that we can count on. So I foresee it being closer to where he's at and then maybe less in the part-time because I think it's so important. Originally, when I was looking at it, I had this thought of it would be best if we could hire people that were either at the end of their full-time career and would want to come here for a few years to help create the structure, the atmosphere of a firehouse atmosphere. There's a lot to it, not just running calls. It's the respect of the entire service.
Right.
So, but thinking about that more, then I'm just creating a revolving door. So I know Chief Shot is hoping to become a full-time employee. There, again, I'm bound by state law. We are bound by state law.
Yeah, that he has to test into it.
I think it is, I do think that whoever the full-time people are, I would like to put more of the weight of dollar amount on that side.
Right, well, and I think there's a lot to be said about longevity and loyalty as well. And I'm not sure on how many years of service he has with us so far, but he has definitely proven, that for it. But the budget that we would hand you, the amount we would hand you would, by increasing it that much, even if it's just for him, and then balancing it out for any other full-time employees that you have because they don't have that longevity, loyalty, or even experience, something to consider.
It is, yes.
Yeah, so something to think about.
Chief, one question, and I think you were very great to focus on some of the pitfalls about going with, potentially other models where we could have seen increased cost from other models, and not to relitigate that at all, but one thing that we talked about, maybe going this route with taking baby steps. Well, I want to ask you, once this baby gets going, once this baby gets its stride, what kind of costs, maybe put on your other hat as a commissioner, what kind of other costs are we looking at Are we looking at more personnel costs potentially to get us to that 6 positions?
Yeah, just to be completely honest, if the village could afford it, and I understand that with my commissioner hat on, and I said to you a while ago, I don't want to be the guy that hires a bunch of people and 2 years from now have to lay them off. That's not what I want to do. So I feel good about being confident that we're going to be able to afford them. So I think that, yes, it would be easier to say, let's just hire full-time people. But if the money is not there, I would rather make sure that I'm going to be able to provide employment in a couple of years, just to not disrupt their life and family for something that doesn't last. So I hope that answered your question. As far as any of the others, that would, it would just depend on what the village can afford, if it can afford to grow, what happens. One of the biggest factors is call volume. Peoria Heights isn't one that can grow in size, but the call volume, it seems like, at least over my experience, call volumes historically have gone up 10% a year, no matter where you are. I think that's similar to what it's done here, and I think it will continue to grow. There was something that said to me recently by a chief friend of mine that 30 years ago, if someone would have fallen, they would have called their family or neighbor to come over and help them. Now, if someone doesn't know who to call, they call the fire department. Now, for someone like me, that's okay, because I want to be the person that's helping them. But it has put an increased strain on our services.
Thank you.
Back to me again, I have more questions for you. Okay, so when we are talking about keeping the volunteers, and you were talking about possibly some education benefits for them and or increasing their stipend, have you thought about what that cost would look like?
This is, he and I spoke today, so I've not put a lot of effort into that. I do know that there was a proposed agreement about offsetting some of the educational costs that I don't believe was ever approved under previous administration. I think that's important because Chief Bill Riddle, a long time ago in East Peoria, wanted to start that in East Peoria. But some of the people that had been there a long time ago worked to not, they didn't want a lot of college students being part of the crew. Especially in Peoria Heights, I see that as a huge benefit. It's young, eager motivation that wants to be in one of those seats, and if we can help capture that for a low cost of assisting someone with education, I think that would be a great thing for us to do.
Well, I agree with you, and I also think that our volunteers should receive, a healthy stipend as well, right? They're putting their life on the line for us. So I guess I just was trying to paint like a full picture kind of with quick math for myself, because if we would have went with the hybrid model with Peoria, so we would have had our existing budget, which I believe is around $365,000 on top of with the Peoria model, that was going to be at minimum another $350,000. So if I take, so right there, we're at $750,000 if we would have kept what we had, keeping our volunteer system and paying Peoria. If my figures are right and I take that same amount, we would be looking roughly like $60,000 more to be able to house it ourselves if you would take what our current budget is plus what your salary is, Chief Decker, subtracting Chief Schott's salary plus this additional $455,000, we're paying $75,000 more to keep it in-house. And I think we're talking about a lot of things, but it's not fully clicking right with everything put together. But that's putting us in, I feel like, a very fair ballpark. We also had residents stand here at countless meeting after countless meeting and say that they wanted us to pay for this, and for just the difference to be at that number when we spend that kind of money on other things. I don't think that that's asking a lot to fund our fire department. Now, do I think that this is the end-all be-all and there's not going to be more things that come our way and it's not going to be expensive? I'm not ignorant to know that that's not what's happening, but I think that asking for the $455,000 to pay for this personnel to come on is well within what we sat here as a board collectively and talked about.
And if I could just elaborate on that, when the Peoria plan was proposed to the village board, what a lot of people don't understand is we were going to pay the city of Peoria $307,200 on the 2022 numbers for providing 10% of our calls. If we take 455,000, if that's the number, and we invest it in our fire department, they're handling all of our calls. It's a much better deal. Instead of throwing, close to that amount of money to Peoria for 10% of the calls. So I second that if I can, Trustee DeVore, that the cost isn't much more than what we were looking at to throw to the city of Peoria. And I do think we get a better product when we do it in-house. I do think, I know that's the case with the police department, that's the case with Public Works. I'm extremely proud of the service and the value Peoria Heights employees give to the village of Peoria Heights. And I think if we take our baby steps, as Trustee Wigington alluded to, I think we can grow our services while keeping costs in check.
You know, I just agree with both of you. Why spend that money given to Peoria when we can invest in our own department here? I've always said that. Under Mark Allen, I was bringing up, we need baby steps. We need to improve because we're not going to be able to stay volunteer. We're going to have some kind of help because I've volunteered coaching sports and everything, and volunteers keep getting smaller. Well, we need to keep the ones that are doing a good job and reward them with these points or an opportunity. They come here and they learn, and who knows, they could end up being hired onto this department. I don't know if I'm stepping out of bounds on this, but I think it's a great idea to invest in what we have here instead of just throwing it away and hoping that they can cover us, because they can barely cover themselves. But I commend you for everything you brought up here, and thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I just want to say one last thing. I don't want to tie your hands, Chief Decker. I really have appreciated everything you've done for us, and I also truly appreciate our fire department here in the village of Peoria Heights and understand and recognize the importance of supporting them and their contribution to our community. I still have to say I feel a little uncomfortable with these numbers. Maybe it's because I'm not a mathematician and I'm not an accountant, and I would feel much more comfortable if we had this on paper, we had more opportunity to discuss it. I would feel more, positive about a deferral just for even another 2 weeks, but I'm not sure that I have support on that, so I just wanted to go on record as saying that, and that wouldn't mean that we wouldn't ultimately get to that point. But I just felt like I needed to let you know that.
I appreciate that. Like I said, I have very thick skin, and no one has.
This is not a
no one
personal,
has tested
please
that.
don't take this
I
personally.
understand.
It's not that. It's
And-
just that I see this as a launching pad
Sure.
to
Yes.
much more expense and our community that I'm afraid at some point will become unsustainable. And
I'll tell you what, I've really appreciated the way everybody's treated me. And everybody's been kind, and they have asked questions, sat with me, and I think that's what's needed here. I understand your concerns, and it is a difficult question when you're bringing something forward and you don't have a stream that's going to pay for it. I understand that. I do feel somewhat, some relief in that we're planning for this, but yet we're getting toward the end of the budget. So I think that's it'll be a good thing to have more conversations between now and start of next budget.
Chief Decker, would 2 weeks derail your plan if we wanted to defer it, to get it in writing? Would 2 weeks be detrimental to your plans?
All I'll say is there's nothing that's going to derail. It will, it just pushes it back. I am concerned, and maybe I shouldn't say this especially, I'm concerned about Morton is talking about starting to hire, and those things concern me. If East Peoria is trying to hire people, I always want to capture that. So to say no would be not completely honest, but yeah, we'll keep moving forward.
Well, I mean, I think there's a unanimous consent to support the actions that are being taken, because, we've talked a lot about the Peoria presentation that they came. That's done. That's a done deal. I mean, I don't know why we're talking about it. It's done. So the option is Peoria Heights. That's the option. That's the only option. So we've got to pay for it. But I think it's also, to Trustee Kazam's point, I've complained in the past where I don't have, an attachment or a amendment or a recitation in a packet. I didn't have $435,000 in my packet. This number came up today, okay? So as a trustee for the citizens of Peoria Heights, $435,000 with nothing in writing is a little bit tough to swallow, because I've got nothing. We've got nothing. So I would not be opposed to a deferral, especially if it's okay, if we're not putting our public safety at risk by doing that. Then, I mean, just as a trustee, I would just so much feel more comfortable for the taxpayers if I had something in writing.
Let me comment, Chief. I could give the worksheets out, I could send the worksheets out tonight. But what you don't want to do is handcuff the chief and what his structure looks like. That's my whole point, is that I don't want to micromanage him. We already know the direction we're going. You have voted on that. We hired a full-time fire chief. We know the direction we're going. Therefore, the worksheets we worked through, I thought the only thing that what you would be concerned about is a number and what we can afford. Because if I do send the worksheets out, there is an average and there is a line item of what the salaries are in the structure, but that could change. You heard the chief say it. He's got to look at it to see it's going to be 3 or 4 full-time, it's going to be 5 part-time. We don't know what that mixture is going to be, and we're going to rely on him to do that, not us. That's the reason why you probably didn't have all the information that you wanted. Now, I did have a discussion with you, so you were aware prior to the meeting over public safety.
Today, though.
Yes, yeah, well, I just explained, that's how we came up with that solution was today, because yesterday, it was $900,000.
Correct.
So I'm trying to dance between the raindrops here and give this man the tools he needs to succeed. Now, do I think 2 weeks? Look, I know how tough it is to hire cops right now and to find qualified, certified cops. It's tough. There are a lot, it's tough, and I understand what you're saying, but is it going to hurt me to delay this for 2 weeks? No, I can get the worksheets right out, but I don't want you concentrating on the structure, because that's his job. I think that we concentrate on the number.
And nothing's going to change in 2 weeks, in my opinion. Yeah. And the reason this came the way it did tonight is because Chief Decker was tasked with doing a needs assessment of the department that took him a few weeks to do. He had it completed on Friday, and he was going to do a presentation, but I thought there would be a sense of urgency amongst all of you, and I changed it from a presentation to a vote. Now, we don't have a motion on the floor yet. I'll ask for one in a minute when you're finished discussing the presentation. A motion to defer is always in order, but I don't think anything changes in 2 weeks, other than we may lose some candidates to other departments.
Yeah, I believe we should get this going on.
Council, do you have something?
I was just going to say, we're in the middle of a budget year, and we're talking about the numbers. It would not at all be inappropriate. It's probably the right thing to do is a budget amendment ordinance that embodies that number, because, we're talking about numbers on an annualized basis, and, we're in the middle of a budget year. So I think, one approach is to look at how it's going to affect the current budget, and then obviously we're going to budget for the next fiscal year. That's a different process, and so I think it might be an appropriate approach for to come back in 2 weeks with a budget amendment that embodies numbers and our best projections based on that. That's just a recommendation.
And I envision with the chief's timeline that the impact on this year's budget is going to be minimal, because by the time he goes through the process, we're going to be close to the end of this budget. So that's going to be minimal to us. But moving forward, obviously, we'll budget for that.
And back to you, Council. I mean, the resolution, if approved tonight or in 2 weeks, it could be a dollar number and not a full-time employee number.
Correct. It probably should be dollars.
Which would allow the chief to use those dollars in the best way.
Because, if we're looking at the agenda, from an Open Meetings Act perspective,
Sure.
the agenda says approval of paid fire department positions. So if we're throwing money at the fire department, do we meet the definition of the Open Meetings Act here by saying we're approving positions, but we're just giving,
That motion can be amended.
it can be amended, but this is what we've advertised. This is what we've advertised. You know, this is what we noticed, is approval for paid fire department positions.
Correct, and that came from
My thought has
council.
always been, whatever we come up with needs to be embodied in an ordinance with budget numbers.
So if we're gonna budget this anyway, and it's a small number right now, do we have to vote on it? I'm confused, because we're gonna budget, like, let's say we're moving forward in this direction, we're saying we're gonna hire these people. So for the next fiscal year, we're gonna sit down with Chief Decker, we're gonna budget this regardless what the outcome is tonight, yes?
Yes, but he's going to need some figures for advertisement purposes.
And
Yeah.
and again, I think we could say it a different way. You could say you're committing to a dollar amount and not a people amount, and let the chief come back and report how many people he's going to hire.
Okay. So we
Either
could-
full-time, part-time, volunteer.
So we would be committing to adding $455,000 to the budget for our next fiscal budget.
Which isn't.
That motion, when made, could be clarified or amended to be
Okay.
more clear, subject to your approval, or a motion to defer is always in order.
Okay.
Well,
So I guess I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the resolution of paid fire department positions, and then I would ask for a motion to amend, but first I'll ask for a motion to approve.
so moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, an amendment's always in order, or discussion on the main motion?
I'd like to make an amendment to, I really don't want to tie your hands, but at least get it to a numerical amount. I feel much more comfortable with that than the way it reads here right now, rather than deferring if we're not going to defer.
Well, we don't know that yet, but the number is $450,316.
What was it? Sorry, Mayor?
Is that correct, Mr. Administrator? $454,316, is that?
Yes.
450,
4,316.
316. Okay.
That's the high end.
So we need to make so, are you, Beth, you have started? Go ahead. I make a motion to amend the approval to increase the fire department budget $454,316.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is that amendment clear to you, council?
It is, but it's for a partial year, so.
So
It's
should
on an
I,
annualized basis.
Well,
okay, on an annualized basis, so should I say prorated to the end of the fiscal year?
well, we could just go ahead and put this on here, can't we? And just, I mean, I know it's for a partial year, but, we didn't go over
You
budget.
can.
Huh?
Yeah, and it would be prorated, and it obviously would apply from the date of hiring,
Okay.
which might not be until the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, so would you like me to say something differently?
No, you're
Okay.
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 Okay, so on the amendment, now discussion on the amendment.
I
And
will
and
echo-
again, a motion to defer is, I don't like that idea, but that's an order, so if someone
I
wants.
will just echo the sentiment that I really wish I would have had something in writing, or at least a slide. And obviously, I don't want to tie Chief Decker's hands on how many positions he can hire with the 455,000. But I'm ready to vote whenever you guys are.
Calling the question?
I thought there was already a motion, I'm sorry.
No, there is, we're on the amendment.
Second.
Okay.
We're on the amendment. Any discussion on the amendment to make this a dollar annualized versus number of FTEs and part-time? If you're ready for the question, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
All right, this is on an amendment to the motion to approve paid fire department positions. The amendment is to increase the fire department budget $454,316 annualized. Is that correct, Trustee DeVore?
Yes.
Trustee Gett?
Yes.
Okay, the amendment, Trustee DeVore.
Aye.
Trustee Gett.
Aye.
Trustee Kazam.
Aye.
Trustee Reichert.
Aye.
Trustee Wigginton?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Aye.
Amendment passes.
All right, we're back to the main motion as amended. So discussion on the main motion.
I move to defer this for 2 weeks to the next meeting.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, call the roll on the deferral.
Trustee DeVore?
Nay.
Trustee Gatt?
Nay.
Trustee Kazam?
Aye.
Trustee Reichert?
Nay.
Trustee Wigginton?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Nay.
That was 4-2, Mayor. It did not pass.
Okay. So back to the main motion.
So I understand the motion now is we're going to spend $454,316. And none of us knew about it until today. Because again, it was a moving target. It was 900, like the Chief Sutton said yesterday. It's $454,316. I know because I asked 3 times for that. So I think we're all in favor of this. I just think this sets a bad precedent that we didn't know, that we, again, I say this, I said it earlier, when I don't have an exhibit in my packet, I said this is not complete and I asked for postponement. When I don't know how much money we're spending and it's a big portion of the budget and it wasn't set in stone until today, I just think it sets a bad precedent. That's why I voted to defer. It's not that I don't back you, Chief. It's not that I don't back the fire department. It's because it's a bad precedent that we didn't know this going in. And, you know, Trustee Weisenberg said when he was looking at the presentation, we didn't know the numbers. Now we do. I just wish we would have known before. So I'll be voting in favor of this. I just think that it does set a bad precedent.
I think, Chief Decker, as this kind of moves along, as you start kind of figuring out your numbers and figuring out how you want to break these numbers down, I think it would be beneficial for you to kind of keep us all in the loop too, so that we can see, even, we're kind of taking a leap of faith with you and just saying, yeah, let's give you the money and hope that you do the right thing. Call me. And it is a big leap of faith, especially because you are new at this position. So I think at moving forward with this, as you've kind of done some stuff and just, we're not trying to micromanage, but keep us in the loop with it. You know what I mean?
We'll need to make some announcements, so yes, I'll keep.
Yeah, just keep us
I'll
up
probably
to,
go
yeah,
through
so there's no
Chief,
more
but-
surprises, you know?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I envision that the public safety chair would give updates throughout this process so the whole board and the community can understand what our structure is here. So that's how I envision that. We knew the direction we were going, and I'll take responsibility of you not having the information that you wanted, Trustee Wigginton. We've been meeting a few times each week on this, and when we came up with this, I gave you the document, Chief, and we discussed it. I thought we were all on the same page. We knew where we had to be. I had hoped you would rely on me as the administrator on what we can afford. I think I've made great decisions in the 6 years I've been up here, considering what I inherited and where we're at. And I thought that we were on the same page. So if wait, hang on. And if I didn't give you enough information, I'll fall on the sword. I apologize. I'm up here quite a lot. You and I did have conversations today, and I did send you the document, but it was not in the packet. I mean, to clear that.
And
Well,
Chief,
and
I'm not questioning.
the agenda went out a couple of days ago. It didn't go out today. You had that, and you had every opportunity to call the administrator and get your questions answered. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. And I know that you've always wanted you didn't want a Band-Aid, you wanted a solution, and I hope this gets you what you need, Mr. Mayor. But I will ask you, Chief, that I'm not questioning you at all, and I know you've got a great track record. It's just about precedent. That's all this is. I told you I'm going to be voting for this.
Right.
I just wish I would have known it.
Well, in a perfect world, I think I would have given the chief more direction to say maybe put this on the slide, but like I said, I will take the blame for that. But I think we're all going the same direction. But I think this is just a minor hurdle And I think that, hope this doesn't cause any more risk, and we should be on the same page on this. Okay?
Anyone else that hasn't spoken? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
This is on the motion as amended. Trustee DeVore?
Aye.
Trustee Gett?
Aye.
Trustee Kazam?
Aye.
Trustee Reichert?
Aye.
Trustee Wigginton?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Aye.
All right, thank you all for that. Thank you, Chief Decker, for a well, in my opinion, a well-done presentation. Okay, we'd be at the next item of new business, ordinance 2023-1719, an ordinance authorizing the lease of property located at 1201-1203 Kingman Avenue to the KDB Group LLC. Trustee Kazam, I would ask for a motion to approve, and then council is going to chime in.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right,
So-
council, you have something?
Oh,
I'm
I know
sorry.
that council has something to say. I was prepared to
Go ahead, go
No, please speak, but
Yeah,
I was
I
prepared.
received correspondence from KDB's council at 4 o'clock today indicating that the sublease has fallen through, and so they're not asking for the lease to be approved, they're asking for a deferral.
A deferral?
They're
Yes,
asking
and
for it to
they're
be
also-
deferred or tabled?
Well,
Defer.
table, I think would be the.
No, I don't want to do that, because
term.
then what's the date specific? If we're going to table
They're
something.
they're not asking for a
That-
date specific, it sounds like they're planning on surrendering possession of the property. But I did not get an answer back when I asked for clarification, so I'm not 100% clear on what they're asking for, but it looks like they're
Well-
planning on surrendering the property, which means we can go out for RFPs.
That's how I read this email as well.
I agree,
But we could also vote on this, correct?
we can.
What do you recommend?
It's on the agenda, it's the board's decision. It's on the agenda, it can be voted on.
Mayor, I would prefer to vote.
I would
So we
too.
can get this behind us. This is the same company that left signs up promising development for years, knowing they weren't going to do it. So I think we need to vote today and put this behind us.
I agree. Well, we have the motion on the floor, and again, a motion to defer is always in order, but do you have anything else you'd like to say, Trustee Weisenberg, on the
No, not at this point.
Okay, well said. All right, anyone else? All right, Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Trustee DeVore?
Nay.
Trustee Gett?
Nay.
Trustee Kazam?
Nay.
Trustee Reichert?
Nay.
Trustee Wigginton?
Nay.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Nay.
All right, so council, where does this put us? Can you, we can now go out for requests for proposals on the property?
I think it's safe to do that, and I will seek some clarification from them, because I would like to clear up the issue. I want the keys, and I want a clear handover of possession. I'll have an answer to that soon, and I'll start working on RFP.
And this doesn't in any way prevent them from coming back and making a proposal if we have to?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we would ask, Wayne, you've got a big workload, so we would ask Mr. Aldridge to prepare a request, or
I'll work with Wayne on getting an RFP drafted.
okay, we could probably do that fairly soon then?
Yes.
Okay. All right, next, ordinance 2023-1720, an ordinance amending Title 8, Chapter 2A of the Village Code of the Village of Peoria Heights for the purpose of providing for operational paperless billing, amending application and testing fees. Trustee Reichert, I would ask for a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
And back to you, Trustee Reichert.
Okay, so a couple of changes that I've noticed to be making, and if I do this wrong, I'm sorry. We've previously had a deposit of $35 that we are going to raise to $50 for each application. The sum to be retained by the village to ensure payment of such dues amounts and services and permanently discontinued. This deposit is less than any owed still to the village. The other change that we are looking to make is meter testing. Any water service consumer may submit a written request for a testing of their meter. Any such testing shall be at the consumer's expense and performed by a third party at their current rate. If the test shows that the water meter is not within 3% accurate, it shall be repaired or replaced, and the testing fee will be refunded, from what I understand, by the village. And I think that might be it. Termination of services can also be emailed now. I'm missing something, I know I'm missing it.
Thank you for that explanation.
I think I'm missing it.
Discussion? Or did I, is there more?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I thought there was one other thing, but I
There's
was.
I think the optional e-payment, e-billing, optional e-billing,
I saw it earlier.
so people can opt
Yeah,
in to be
yeah, sorry,
e-billed.
go ahead.
No, that's fine,
I'm
go
really
ahead.
bad, I gotta get used to
It just
this.
gives people the option to
Yes.
receive an e-bill instead of a paper bill in the mail.
How, can I ask a question now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so
Are you
how-
done? Are you done, trustee Reichert?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so how would people opt into paper billing? Do they go online, like how is?
Yeah, I mean, that will have to be figured out, but I imagine that's what it would be.
Okay, so that's not currently set up, it's once we have passed this, then that would become an option?
I believe
So
so.
trustee DeVore, Emily would work with Invoice Cloud. They have the option that they can turn on for e-billing.
Okay.
They've informed her that once we do turn that on, it will, anytime you begin an online payment, it will ask if you want to sign up. She also has materials ready if the board does approve this to start marketing that option, and we're planning to add that option to the contract for when you sign up. Would you like a physical bill or an e-bill? Basically, we'll be doing everything we can to push that option administratively so that the residents have the option to sign up.
Okay,
Remember, this was the first phase in the monthly billing to get this data,
yes.
so.
Please don't
for
judge
that.
me too harshly on this. I really knew where it was before the meeting started. I just-
Okay, then my next question is, so this changing of the testing of the meters, we'll still do we test our meters?
Well, when it's requested, yes. And basically, the system that we have set up now is just us testing it. And I believe it was like a $15 or $25 fee. But that's just for us to test ourselves.
Okay.
This would be if there's some kind of dispute,
Okay, but if.
third party would be, so we would not be involved in the testing. It would be a third party that would be doing the testing.
So we no longer will ever test a meter?
No, I don't believe so, no. I just don't, I mean, that would be one party's interest in the testing.
Sure, I get it.
And I can understand how that would be an issue.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Okay, I just, make sure I got this right. When we switch, vote on this, it's going to, residents of Peoria Heights will get a notice that we're going to go paperless billing. You have the option, but we're going to still send them out paper, right? So it's not just,
If they sign up for the optional
Yeah, if you sign up for
option,
it,
we
you
wouldn't
get an
have
email.
to send a paper bill.
Yeah.
I'm saying that.
But you
How
can
did
still receive one if you'd like.
It's paper until you opt into the virtual.
Yeah, everyone's still getting a paper bill unless you say yes.
Did we ever re-examine the option to do this monthly?
Well, we're going to collect the data to see if that percentage went down.
Okay.
If we do e-billing, and then
Okay.
it's going to take about 3 months.
Okay.
Once we get that data, then we're going to come back to the board and say, here's what it is. If we
Okay.
wanted, if we decide to go monthly or bi-monthly, whatever it
Okay.
is. So 2 to 3 months, we should have some update.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Supervisor Chandler, so I think to build off what trustee DeVore was saying, we currently do this in-house for the testing. We're going to ask that the water customer go through a third party and get their own test. Here's the kicker, though. If it turns out that the meter is wrong, then we refund that price.
Right.
Whatever the market price is. So currently, it's $15 is what we refund.
No, that's for us to do it in-house.
Right.
I believe it's about $75 to $100 maybe to have this done.
Okay. So we
And
could be refunding $75 to $100.
Yeah, and if our meter is incorrect, we want to get it out of the system and make sure it's accurate.
How many times last year would you say that you, okay.
0.
So I just want to know,
Yeah.
again, a dollar, wondering a dollar amount here.
Yeah, this is
So,
something
okay.
that does not happen often. Meters do not overread. They are not built that way. They're displacement meters. The only way they read is if they're displaced by water going through them.
Right.
Superintendent
if-
Chandler, can you give us an example of a third party?
I can't think of the name of the company, but it's not the manufacturer. It is
Okay.
a separate company that does testing. And, I mean, there's one that, I just can't think of the name of it right now, that we would agree with them to go through that company.
Okay. And one other question, we said we're going to do everything to push e-billing. I totally agree with that. However, are we going to rebate the customer at all to go to e-billing? Is there going to be any potential, what's the carrot for the consumer?
Yeah, you're asking the wrong person on that one.
Okay,
Probably convenience.
just convenience?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee DeVore?
Some
Aye.
people are still old
Trustee
school.
Gett?
Aye.
Trustee Kazam?
Aye.
Trustee Reichert? Aye. Trustee Wigginton?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Next, ordinance 2023-1721, an ordinance amending Title IV, Chapter 1, Section 24 of the Village Code of the Village of Peoria Heights regarding hearings before the Liquor Commissioner and directing the establishment of a policy for alcohol compliance operations. Trustee Wigginton, I'd ask for a motion to approve.
I move to approve ordinance 2023-1721.
Second, please.
Second?
Okay, go ahead, Trustee Wigginton.
Chief Sutton and I sat down and talked a little bit about this on Friday when the agenda came out, and had a discussion about what this entailed. And basically, from what I understand, we're going to have an administrative recording to record all the proceedings so that the record of these before the Liquor Commissioner, Mr. Mayor, are recorded, and that is the record, that's the legal record of note going forward. Make sure that's correct, Chief.
Yeah, that's part of, that's part of it, Trustee Wington. Historically, the state police had already, when we get a complaint of underage, selling to minors alcohol, the state would handle that as far as any type of sting or anything. What we found out is, one, the state's not doing that any longer. They're pushing it back to the municipalities. Therefore, we need an ordinance in place to do it ourselves. So this will cover us on that, and then also what you just explained as far as the hearing.
And from my little bit of research, the city of Peoria does this as well. They have their section 3-30, which they have an official record of proceedings, and any appeal of any order taken by the commissioner is limited to the review of that recording as well. So this, I think we're from a liability perspective, we are preserving our legal interest by
Yes.
doing this.
This is really an update. This is something probably we should have had a while ago. When I caught it, I made the recommendation. And then part about the stings and investigations goes along with this, another thing that we needed to do, just based on change in state enforcement.
And from a public safety perspective, I think this is a real service to our residents as well, making sure that all businesses are operating within our jurisdiction effectively and legally.
Correct.
Questions or discussion? Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Trustee DeVore?
Aye.
Trustee Gett?
Aye.
Trustee Kazam?
Aye.
Trustee Reichert?
Aye.
Trustee Wigginton?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Aye.
All right, that passes. We would be at miscellaneous. Any miscellaneous business?
I wanted to just give an update on the notification system. So administration did go through their first round of training on the notification system, and it is looking like that will be ready to roll out in the middle of January. We do not have an exact date yet, but that is coming to us rather quickly. Every single part of the notification system will be opt-in now. So when you choose to opt in to the system, which you'll do on the village website, you will be able to itemize or pick out which updates you want. Like, do you want just updates on water? Do you want updates on police, fire? Whatever, you will be able to handpick which notifications you receive via text message. And just to keep an eye out, we will notify people when it's up, but it will be, and you will enroll on it on the village website.
Question for you. When we're engaging with this, what is it, Code Red, Code Blue, whatever the company's name is?
It's not that, it is just a name for it. We're not calling it that.
Okay.
Peoria Heights notification.
Some of those services do not text to VoIP numbers, like Google Voice numbers, et cetera. So I would be curious to know if they're compatible with modern phone services. Because I have a lot of people that I sign up for that stuff, and they can't text my phone because I don't have a traditional phone number.
We have a contact for the company, that'd be
Yeah,
something.
I can definitely ask them about that. And
There's quite a few more out there than just Brandon. I mean,
they should have an answer for that right away, I would think.
okay,
They would know about that.
thank you.
And it's not just text. You can get emails, you can get text, you can get voice calls.
And if I'm correct, so the default will be opt-in, so everyone is
Right.
opted in.
No.
You have to opt in.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
its default is opt-out.
Yeah.
and then
If you're
you have to
interested in this, you will go to the website and it will send you to a portal.
Proactively sign
And you
up.
can,
Okay.
you can sign up for it. And at any time, you can
Cancel.
say, I don't want it anymore, and uncheck and not get them anymore. It's a completely customer-controlled portal.
Except for the weather alerts.
You'll get those anyway.
Trustee Weisenberg is
That
getting all
also-
of
yeah,
them
that also-
automatically. He's already opt-in for every notification.
Walk outside.
You will, if you get that right now, you will still only get it once.
I don't get those right
Hey,
now.
I did inform the school that you wanted more notifications.
No, I don't
So
want no
turned
more
on more there,
notifications.
too.
I've got enough notifications.
Any other miscellaneous? Any committee chairs that want to report on anything?
I can mention that, so in an effort to replace, as the IEPA is mandating, replace all the lead lines, we have now sent out a letter. People have received this recently. If we're not sure what your service line is made of, and there's a process, those letters have gone out. We've already had a few appointments to figure out what service lines, just follow the instructions, and it's going to help us identify all these lines that we're going to have to replace.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks. So if we haven't gotten a letter, then our lines are free of lead.
No, not
No,
necessarily.
they know that
They
you
know.
have lead, or they know that you don't have lead.
Right.
Yeah.
It's been identified.
You know, we don't know.
Right, yeah. That's a possibility.
Pretty
yes.
bad stuff. I'm looking forward to getting that removed
Yeah.
from our water system.
Have you gotten any feedback or a lack of feedback from this ice pigging? Like, have you had fewer reports of brown water in those areas?
I would say yes, we probably have, yeah. It feels like our calls have gone down. I'm not going to say that's,
He's not gonna
I
jinx
know
it.
what you're saying, it's going to be a little while before we can tell for sure.
Okay.
But recently, our
Complaint?
calls have gone down, yes.
From administration or public works perspective, or chief, I know we have Wood and Kern working up something for us for, options going forward. Have there been any movement there? When can we expect a presentation from them?
I think Director Aldridge actually talked to them today.
Yeah, I did talk to them today. They did submit a proposal, and we've revised the proposal. So after my review, I asked for a revised proposal. So we're still working towards that. I think we envision like a two-phase of this. Would like a presentation presenting the facts from Woodard and Kern and from staff. There's some operational issues we'll need to work through, just to present some facts and things that we know about rate structures and operational costs and other capital costs that we've already discussed. So anticipate a presentation like that. We've discussed a town hall format potentially with the mayor. And then maybe a decision made at that point, or maybe some discussion before we go to phase two, which gets more costly and more due diligence as far as estimates and conversations then with Illinois American, things like that. So right now, anticipate this two-phase process. The first phase being the kind of facts as we know them now until we get into more significant costs as far as due diligence.
Thank you.
Director Aldridge, do we have to do phase two? Like, let's say we get through phase one and we decide maybe we've made our mind up what we want to do.
We do not.
Then we're not
That
held
would
to
be
that.
up to the board, based on public opinion, based on your own decision-making, based on the facts, yeah.
So if phase one is enough, we do not have to spend the funds to fully do
Right,
phase
yeah,
two.
that was our kind of, the two-phase process. Don't spend a lot of money up front, and then allow some participation to see where we are.
When would phase two be necessary?
I think if the board says we're very interested, I mean, it's a decision point. We're very interested in starting negotiations, beginning discussions, doing appraisals, that type of thing.
Phase two would be whether we sell the water company. Is that phase two?
It's not a decision even at that point, but you make a decision to spend more money.
You're going forward, you're going closer towards that
Yes.
decision, I would
Towards
say.
that decision.
So what's phase one?
Phase one is, again, facts gathering, things that you haven't heard before. Capital plan updates, budgetary updates, operational updates, things like that. And then, we're concerned about the tower. We give you estimates for what's operational issues with the tower. Things like that if we move forward. And then we'd also have some opinions of cost for the phase two at that point too, that we present. But I think it gives a good time to kind of break and get some public input and have some back and forth. And just make some, so we can make a better decision at that point.
And I don't think the public forum or public hearings, whatever you want to call it, happen until we get the experts from Woodard and Kern on board that can answer all the questions that you want answered in the public. So that's around the corner as soon as we get a little further down the road.
And again, it's both Woodard and Kern with the current, facts and its staff as well. Numbers that we know about operations.
Any other miscellaneous? Director Aldridge, anything you want to report on at this time, like an update on infrastructure? Or?
The HUD Healthy Homes Program, those applications were closed on last Friday, so.
How many
going through,
applications?
I think about 40, I would say, and again, we're trying to narrow that down to about 15, applicants that we move forward with. So there'll be a screening process done by staff, kind of not very in-depth, and then a financial screening done by METEC. They're ready to do that, and then there's going to be home visits and inspections before we ever make the final decisions on which homes we're proceeding with.
So we would do maybe 12 to 15 homes out of those 40, is that feasible?
Yes, that's the goal. 15 homes has been the goal. Also, the RFQ, request for qualifications, has been issued for Prospect Road. They are due, I believe, January 10th through regional planning. So I've just heard, I think there's a lot of good interest in that project, primarily locally led teams, I think, for that project. Also working on preparing a RFQ for the zoning code revisions and potential form-based code for business districts. So that's in the works too.
Director, the Healthy Homes Grant, is that ongoing or is that one-time funded?
It's a one-time thing. I think as far as HUD is concerned, there's several programs. Healthy Homes is one. I'm hearing there may be specifically just a radon program and maybe just a lead-based paint program. So those could be less complex than the Healthy Homes program just because there's less involved. But,
Yeah, I asked that because it sounds like 15 people are going to be happy, but 25 people may
right.
not get funding, so.
But, yeah, there's ongoing programs. These programs are complex to administrate. We've mentioned that, but that's why if there's something simpler like just lead-based paint or radon, we might take advantage of grants for that.
Thank you.
And Director Aldridge, I want to thank you too for all your hard work. It goes a lot behind the scenes, but it is well appreciated. And I hate to put you on the spot on this though, so I'm going to lead with that compliment. Now I'm going to put you on the spot. So do you know with the HUD, the Healthy Home Grant, as well as the Prospect Road, do you know what the village's contribution is going to be? And maybe Chief can answer that too. do you know what we're going to have to pony up for our side of the grant?
Well, for Prospect Road, the grant agreement that has yet to be seen by the board, but the grant anticipated $500,000 match from the village.
Okay.
The Healthy Homes Program, I think anticipated like $7,500 from the grant and around $10,000, being the total cost, so around $3,000 to $5,000 for each home.
Per home? Okay, so, yeah.
So, and again, we don't have agreements for the Prospect Road. That'll come from IDOT. They're working on it, so we'll see that. And then, but the next step would be the selection of the consultant team, and hopefully IDOT will have an agreement before soon.
So just when we're budgeting, I know we're getting ready for budget season coming up. This $500,000 and the $65,000 for the HUD grant, are we building that into the budget as well?
Well, we haven't started working on the budget yet, but it's definitely something that Director Aldridge and I have been talking about on what our percentage, what we're going to have to match.
I definitely agree with that, because looking forward, projecting, we need to understand. I mean, also, we're not considering Route 29. That's also another responsibility.
We owe money for that too?
Yes.
Yeah, Route 29, you might recall, we applied for a congressional, basically earmarked congressionally directed spending for that through Congressman Sorensen. I think we heard good news that it's still in consideration. It passed the committee, so we may get money for that water line replacement on that project. So there will be expenses related to water and some other items on that project, but primarily that'll be funded through IDOT.
Great.
But there was an à la carte list if the trustees, the board so desired to select some of those à la carte options that could add to our costs, but the road itself would be primarily funded.
Right, and à la carte items outside of water could be lighting, could be wayfinding, could be, other things like that.
Well, we talked about an overpass.
Yes.
Well, I think all good investments, especially below the hill, I think something to consider, but, obviously, got to make sure we got the finances to do it.
Good point.
Can any of like the Prospect Road stuff, can we fund some of that through the BDD funds, or is that not a BDD eligible expense?
I don't think it's a BDD expense. I'm not sure, though.
It might be less BDD and more TIF.
Okay.
Potentially, depending on how you might want to fund it.
Maybe landscaping for BDD, some of that, and then.
Could be, yeah. Yeah, so, and water, there's going to be water issues out there too, so there could be water-funded items. But again, our intention, we don't know how the construction is going to be funded at this point. We still need to apply for grants, but our intention will be try to get the most possible from the grants.
Thanks, Dwayne.
Anyone else? Just one last thing I'd like to add. Thanks to the Public Works Department for the decorations and how terrific Village Hall and Tower Park looks, so thank you.
No problem. You're welcome.
Okay, we're back to comments from the audience are open again, so if anyone would like to address the board, please come forward to the podium, give your name and address, and try and keep your remarks under 5 minutes. Yes, Mary, welcome.
I need to get my name and address.
Yeah.
Okay, Mary Bear, 5016 North Clarendon. Real quick, since it's taken so long, I just want to thank Dustin and Chief Decker for all the hard work to get where we are today. I'm sad that it took this long. I'm disappointed that some people weren't on board at the beginning. I appreciate all the work Brandon has done, and I appreciate the fact that he said we need to start with baby steps. If you'd have went with the Cadillac plan, it would have failed right from the beginning. We have a great police department, and we didn't get 17, 18 officers overnight. You get what you need, and then you work from there. And I truthfully don't understand why that is such a hard concept for some people to understand, but I look forward to the fact that this is a new start.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Jay Gruber, 3814 North Monroe, Peoria Heights. Let's see, it's the old book bindery, right? I was noticing the difference between disclosing the $35 to $50 fee increase and then the $454,000. We don't know if we're going to get, how many full-timers we're going to get, how many part-timers we're going to get. I am concerned that I don't know of any personnel department that doesn't have to put together a budget of what exactly we're buying. I would support this fire department here. I am very excited to have part of them be paid, but I really feel that the information that was provided to the trustees didn't sound complete enough, and it wasn't on the agenda that there was $454,000 going to be spent tonight. I don't know, I'm not an expert at the public record stuff, but I just, I'm concerned. I want it to stick. I am in agreement who we hire, we want to keep, as long as they want the career in the fire department. But I'm very concerned, we disclosed the $50, and the e-billing, and yet we didn't have a number for the budget for the department, and I'm concerned, and I want this governing body to do a great job, and you guys do. I'm glad you talked about it, but I'm concerned that there wasn't enough discussion about the amount and what we're going to get. And I'm really excited for the new tenure of Fire Chief Decker. I have the highest regard for the volunteers and the part-timers. I just think we should have known more about what we're getting and support clear numbers. So thank you for supporting the fire department. I do too.
Thank you for your comments, and I assure you, we'll know more from the chief as he moves forward, and once he knows how many he's going to hire and part-time and full-time, he will disclose that as soon as he knows, I'm sure. But thank you for your comments. All right, anyone else? Going once? Twice? Public comments are closed. We'd be at payment of the bills. I would ask for a motion to pay the bills.
I make a motion to pay bills?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pay the bills. Any discussion on the motion, questions on the bills? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee DeVore?
Aye.
Trustee Gett?
Aye.
Trustee Kazam?
Aye.
Trustee Reichert?
Aye.
Trustee Wigginton?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Aye.
All right, that passes. The bills are paid. We would be at the Treasurer's report, Madam Clerk.
As of the end of November, there was $8,272,686.08 in the village-controlled accounts. In the water-controlled accounts, there was $2,189,616.73.
You heard the Treasurer's report. I would ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion, questions on the report? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee DeVore?
Aye.
Trustee Gett?
Aye.
Trustee Kazam?
Aye.
Trustee Reichert?
Aye.
Trustee Wigginton?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Aye.
All right, that passes. I'd just like to take this time to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and safe travels if you're traveling. And I would look to Trustee Gett.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All right, it's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, thank you. We are adjourned. And I do want to congratulate you all. We had very serious discussions tonight, and you all were very civil and thoughtful. I appreciate that, so thank you.